If the whole world is indeed a garden, as Francis Hodgson Burnett once wrote, then the garden route of South Africa was cultivated by a maverick horticulturist. In truth, the name is somewhat misleading because the garden route is about as far from the average garden as could conceivably be imagined. And to tell us about this is our very special guest, Brother Muhammad Tayyub Amir, who is a blogger, actually, Halal Travel blogger. So, what can you say about this magnificent garden that we're talking about?
Assalamu alaikum, Najma, to you and all the listeners on Salam
Walaikum
Media.
salam.
Yes, you very aptly spoke about the garden route, and it's there's so much to speak about. So when you're talking about garden route, it actually starts from it depending where you're coming from. So if you're coming from Joburg, then it goes between Storms River and Mossel Bay, and then if you're coming obviously from Cape Town, it's Mossel Bay to Storms River. So garden route, what makes it unique is not only if you're a first time traveler, if you're a seasoned traveler that's going on the garden route, every year. That's why you'll hear people, they don't only do it once, they do it multiple times, because each
Right.
stop along the garden route is, a destination on its own.
Hmm. And highlighting those who I suppose would take us an hour, right? And we
Yes,
apologize for
definitely.
starting a bit late. However, when we talk about halal travels, tell us more about it.
Okay, yeah. So Halal Travels is basically it's a blog, and it's on Instagram and a website as well. So it's where like-minded people, travelers share ideas. So whether you're looking for anything local or international, there's a lot of it's not just us that put it. There's a lot of guest writers and people. It's basically made up of a whole community, and we all share ideas. So if you're looking for any travel inspiration, then you visit the Halal Travels, and we can discuss, and inshallah you can see ideas from many people. So it's just a whole collaborative effort from the whole community.
All right. And so is it specifically like our guest last week? We're highlighting halal tourism as,
Yeah.
so to speak, during Heritage Month in South Africa. And I've specifically chosen South Africa as that destination because there's a lot of beauty, but with it, there's this history. And how
Yeah.
much of it can we, in fact, um, be proud of as Muslims?
Yeah, no, in fact, South Africa, alhamdulillah, we're really blessed. You don't have to travel, far and wide. You can actually take a drive or even a walk. Sometimes depending, where you stay, you can walk down the road. There's a park, and alhamdulillah, we're blessed as Muslims to have, the garden route on its own. It makes us proud as not just as a Muslim, but I mean, as a South African, to have such beauty in our doorstep. Because if you look at garden route, you've got places like Mossel Bay, you've got Knysna, you've got Plettenberg, and like you mentioned earlier, if we chat about each place on its own, that looks like the Storms River Bridge that just popped up on screen. That's also another,
Right.
another site to witness. So we can, as we go on in this discussion, we can maybe highlight, a few points along the garden route where, to
Yeah.
stop and take in the views.
Yeah, certainly. And before I want you to actually do that, but I just want to make a comment. And I said this in the introduction of our program earlier this morning when I said just being in nature and indulging in those beautiful scenic, areas and sites, one is
Yeah.
already in contact with one's creator.
Yes.
And I think that's the consciousness that just must be highlighted, I suppose, as people who would come with your tour group.
Yeah, definitely. Because when you speak about being in nature, the difference between nature and an actual activity, like if you're going out for activity, to get the enjoyment, you have to do the activity. But in nature, it's actually the opposite. You go into nature, and you can just stand still and not do anything, and then you actually take in where you actually are, and then the beautiful oxygen, the fresh air, just feeling all
Mm,
this, just puts you in a, and then you need to, but it's important also when you feel all these feelings, and to say subhanallah, and to remember your creator who created everything. And it's not just a means
mm,
to enjoy, but a means to realize who the creator is, and just taking the beauty that
right.
he has created for us.
That's right. So, what would you highlight in terms of the garden route? Where would you start?
Sure. Okay.
Places to
So
see? Yeah,
I'll speak about it from if you don't mind, maybe from Cape Town upwards, or Joburg down. So it depends
certainly.
where you start. So if you start off from Cape Town, then your first main stop would be George, and George is actually the second oldest town in the Western. Well, sorry, the second largest town in the Western Cape and the sixth oldest in South Africa. So
Okay.
George, then yeah. So from George, you can head off to Knysna, and then after that, you can stop at Wilderness. Then you've got Sitsikama, you got Storms River, you got Muscle Bay. So each stop, there's activities to do every day, and you are able, depending
Right.
on
So
your
in
time
terms of
duration and how much time you have.
right, in terms of
Yes.
the history in George, I think we're having a bit of a
Yeah.
problem with the connection on your side, the internet connection on your side. So, but you can hear me clearly, right?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
I
okay.
can. Yeah.
So, okay, good. So the history in George, if it's the, what did you say, the sixth oldest city, has it been
Yeah.
preserved? Has it been restored?
Yeah, so in terms of history, so before the Europeans settled there in the late 1700s, it was actually inhabited by I don't know how to pronounce the word, but I think it's Khoikhoi or Kukun tribe. And then thereafter, I
Right.
think after the Europeans came, that's when it actually became known as George. And because of the landscape, all the forestry there, they actually it became a place where you can supply timber. So I think the whole history of George is for the supply of timber, and it actually has been
Hmm.
preserved like up till today in that supply. Yeah, so that I mean that's in terms of history of George that I can say. And then maybe if you
Right.
want to you want to chat about Knysna also, because Knysna is the, if you tell someone you're doing the garden route, you no one does the garden route without going to Knysna, because that's basically the definition of the garden route, Knysna.
Right.
So
Right.
besides beautiful scenery, boat trips, and all of that in Knysna, there's actually two annual events that happen there that I would like to bring to your attention. Is the
Sure.
Knysna Oyster Festival that
Right.
actually started in 1983, and it's a 10-day event, and it happens around the end of June, beginning of July. So that's the Oyster Festival. And then if you're not much of a foodie, maybe you're into speed or fast cars, there is something called the Knysna Speed Festival. Now it's actually
Uh-huh.
currently known as the Jaguar Samola Hill Climb. So that's a 3-day event, and that happens annually in May. So if you do want to do the garden route, outside of the December rush and the holiday season, you can maybe go do it in May or June, July, and then coincide your trip with these two events. They are actually nice
And
to witness.
sure. And when is the best time of the year to visit there, though?
Yeah, without a doubt, the best time would be December and January, because it will be crowded, but because you have longer days, so the sun will only set around 8 o'clock, and because there's a lot of activities and a lot of things to do, you'll mostly be outdoors and not much indoors. So you want a longer day. So I'd say June. I mean, December is the best, but I mean, if you're averse to the crowds and you want another time, then maybe September to November might be better. So it just depends on your personal view on how would you like to travel.
Right. There are these small little towns in between. Like we're looking at Knysna, we're looking at George, we're
Yeah.
looking at Plettenberg Bay, and then
Yes.
Sitsikama as you go along all the way. But there's this different type of feel in the small little towns there.
Yeah.
Like Sedgefield, for example, there's different
Yes.
culture. Who are the inhabitants? Because Knysna, Plettenberg Bay, we're assuming is inhabited by um, European investors, that are
Yeah.
living there. But where's the roots? Where's the culture itself?
Yeah, so when you're speaking about culture and maybe about religion and stuff, it's
Mm,
when you're traveling through the whole garden route, there's not much for that I can say about for Muslims. Like if you look at George, there's one masjid, and then Knysna doesn't have one, so it's a bit difficult to find maybe halal food and a place to pray. But speaking about the smaller towns, something that I would like to say is Wilderness. That's it's near Sedgefield, and going through the towns, you'll just the vibe and the feel, the amount of
yes.
hikes you can do in Wilderness. It's something else. There's something called the Kingfisher hike, and it's about 10 k's, and there's actually a point where you can actually kayak. So you can actually take the kayak and go to the next part, or you can cross a pontoon. So like you rightly mentioned, we look at all these big towns like Knysna, Muscle Bay, and Plettenberg Bay, but sometimes you might just drive through a hidden gem and not make a stop. So like Wilderness and Sedgefield is something that is worth mentioning and worth making a stop. If you see a board, just go into the town. You never know what you can find.
Right. And are they, as South Africans, we know we have a different, um, I suppose, traditions in different provinces. Like Natal would
Yeah,
be different, Cape Town is different, and then this part of the country that we're talking about or that we focused on.
yeah,
And since we're talking about heritage, and you spoke about the Khoi people that inhabited George, if
yeah,
or that the first inhabitants there. Um, what about the rest of that place in terms of that kind of heritage and the maintenance or upkeep or the feel of it? How has
yeah.
the tourism industry actually upkept that, for the want of a better
Yeah.
word?
So if you do go to George, just walking around, you can feel that it's an old town, and I mean that rightly so, because it's the sixth oldest in South Africa. You just walking around, looking at the architecture. There's also a museum in George that you can have a look, and that's been upkept very, very well. So I think to get the true essence of George as a town, go into the museum, have a look at the what's on display, and there's also George Botanical Gardens. So in terms of the history, I mean, there you can see all the flora in the botanical gardens. That's also part of George, and part of the
Yeah,
inhabitants that first got there. So I think if culture and heritage really excites you, as opposed to just driving through George and just stopping for lunch like we all do at Nando's. I'm
mm.
not sure if you heard about the Nando's in George, but
Yes,
go to the museum, go to the
because
botanical
it's
gardens.
halal.
Yeah, yeah, and it's actually when you're talking about food traditions, I'd say that that's actually become a tradition to stop at at the George and I mean the Nando's in George. So
Okay.
take some time, view the museum, view the botanical gardens, and you'll definitely get a feel for the heritage of the town.
Hmm. And then moving up towards the forest, the Sitsikama Forest, and there's some amazing. It's just lined with forests before you actually get into the reserve where the
Yeah.
forest is. That route is
Yes.
incredible in terms of the preservation, the conservation, shall I call it
Yeah.
that, because it's nature and it's of course heritage sites, etc.
Yeah, so speaking of that, you if you go further down the garden route, you'll get like we mentioned about wilderness and hikes. You get Storms River and Tsitsikama. So there's
Mm.
like in terms of heritage, just to go have a look at the Storms River. There's actually a small hike that will take you towards there's it in the picture, the Storms River
Hmm.
Bridge. You'll get a hike to go through there, and you can actually witness the Storms River mouth. Now that town Storms River was named after the river itself. And then if you go into the Tsitsikama National Park, the mouth actually yeah, so the river mouth is in the Sitsikama National Park. So that also speaks to heritage, and visiting these old sites, read up on it before you
Correct.
go there. It'll add to the to the experience. And also
Mm.
just another fact that's interesting is the have you heard of the 5-day otter trail? Now that actually
Yes, I
starts there
have.
by the Storms River mouth. It starts there, so it's nice to know. These like it's such a big hike, and it's starting at a heritage place. So it's nice to understand this before you do visit the place. It just adds
Hmm.
to the feel of it.
And how would you describe the cultural and religious identity of the areas?
So yeah, cultural and religious, like I mentioned earlier, there's not much in terms of Muslims, and
Mm.
so carry your musalla to pray, and that is, I must say, a bit of a difficulty along the garden route. So at least to know that in your mind before you go, make your provisions for your food, and although it's not much in terms of Muslim heritage, read about the inhabitants that came there before. Find
Yes.
out. It'll help you in your as you traverse this garden route.
Knowing where you are. And
Yeah,
yes, to interrupt you, I think also, as a South African I mean, a tourist in your own country, I think we
yeah,
just go and enjoy the beauty and go for a holiday, and
yeah, yeah,
if we were to travel to another country, we'd be interested in who were the original
yeah,
inhabitants. A guide would come along. You'd see all the significant sites. So I think, if you and I are addressing the South African tourist here, then I think it's important then to bring this about, and this is probably the intention
yeah,
of the theme that I've picked for my travel segment, so that we
Yeah,
can highlight this as tourists. But the other very important point is, are we still paying international tourist rates at these sites? Because as South
yeah,
Africans,
for
we're
sure.
paying too much. Has there been
Yeah.
a change?
They actually has. So, but it's important to carry either your maybe your driver's license or your ID. So there's some places where they'll have and well, firstly there used to be one rate, and that basically internationals and locals pay the same amount. But now I know it might not be garden route, but Kirstenbosch Gardens, as an example, is if you enter there, they actually have a specific South African rate. So I'm
Good.
sure I haven't checked, all the along the garden route, but before you enter any place, you must check. You can get like combo discounts, or you can get a South African price. And how to identify your South African is you mustn't not by speaking Afrikaans or anything. Show your South African ID or your passport or something, and you can make use
Right.
of the local rates. That definitely helps, especially with the
Okay, I'm
petrol
here.
price so high. At least we have money for the activities.
And the
Yeah.
dollar price, for
Yes.
heaven's sake,
Yeah.
so yeah, it wouldn't be, I mean, that's what might be putting people off from
Yeah.
traveling in
No.
their own
Sure.
country,
Yeah.
so how would you then um, encourage tourists to that area?
You're speaking about like the garden route as a whole.
That's right,
Yeah.
yes.
So garden route is there's so many things to do, and it's why it's sort of weird. I mean, in the South African tourism is because you don't get many destinations where like it's only basically a 200 to 300 kilometer distance. There's so many things to do. If you're going to other countries, you might have to take a plane to go to a different destination. But here you've got such beauty, and it's very narrowly located, so you can plan 2 weeks, 3 weeks. If you just want to go for 10 days, I'd really advise someone, if you haven't been along the garden route, if you are watching today, as soon as this conversation is done, type in Google, search garden route, and actually look at the plots along the way, and then, check everything, and you'll actually find out how much of beauty and why people keep coming back to the garden route. So I'd highly advise, just do some Google searches, hop onto Halal Travels, or anyway, just check out, and you definitely will not go wrong. But do it early, because the places get
It
booked
gets
up very,
fully
very
booked.
quickly. Yeah, I mean by
Yes.
June, July, it's already fully booked. But you never know, you
Mhm.
might find a luck now, even if you check now. So it's not too
All
late.
right. And what else does Halal Travel offer?
Yeah, so what we try to do also is not just give information of different places, and like I mentioned earlier at the start, is it's a community and different people, right? So you get a lot of personal experiences. So it's not like if you do a Google search, or you'll just get facts. You'll actually get ideas from people that have been to the local place, whether it's Hong Kong, Turkey, South Africa, and also some locals of that country. So might have someone that spoke about Hong Kong and they live there, or someone that spoke about Mozambique and live there. So you get a diverse range of information, from
Mm,
tourist information to local information. So, and it's
right.
no real time, and so that's what it's all about. Yeah.
Okay, that's wonderful. So I think we don't really, you and I don't really have to encourage people to visit. It's just the most beautiful place in the
Yeah.
world. And
No,
that's not an
definitely.
exaggeration. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for your patience with us. We started a bit late. As you know, we've had our load shedding
Yeah.
timetable here. So
Yeah.
Jazakallah for your patience, and Jazakallah for your time. And we'll be in touch again,
No,
inshallah.
definitely. Thank you for the time, and it was really a real honor to speak to you. And I hope that people who have listened have benefited, and enjoy your travels from here on.
Inshallah. Thank you so much. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu
Wa
alaikum.
alaikum salam.
And that rounds up our mid morning talk for this week's edition. Inshallah, I'll be back with you next week with the same format. Stay with Salam Media. And from me, lots and lots of love, lots and lots of peace. And I hope we've had some inspiration from our program today. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.